Welcome to Beyond Religion, X 2x2 Stories of Deconstruction, where we talk with people who have left the 2x2 church and whose beliefs have moved beyond Christianity and organized religion. With me today is a woman whose eloquence with the English language makes me look like a Neanderthal. Kristen McLeod, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike, and for everything that you and Abby have done to create this community. It's pretty spectacular.
We're super glad that it has turned into what it has turned into, for sure. Made connections that we never imagined we would make. To start off, could you share with us where you stand today in terms of your beliefs?
That's such a huge question, and it's a good one for me because it's a topic and thing that I avoid considering much. I think that it's best defined by a very nebulous, tentative belief in a small g god who um, exists, but the shape and the form of that, I couldn't even begin to try to define. And what I mean by that isn't define for everyone, but even for myself. Um,
Sure, absolutely.
I'm not trying to talk in riddles because we both know people who do that. I think what I'm trying to say is it feels undefinable, and the flip side of that uncertainty and awkwardness that when you pose that question you evoke in me. But the flip side is I'm okay more than I ever have been with feeling that.
Yeah,
Does
I
that
can
make sense?
appreciate that. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of us are. Even if we put some kind of a term to our beliefs, uh, it doesn't make them cemented. It doesn't make them a solid, stick in the ground that you have to make. Yeah. All right. So to back up to the beginning, tell us a little bit about how you came into contact with the two by two church, because I understand you weren't born into it, I should say.
To born and raised. My dad, okay, I'm going to tell you the story. So we were living in a house, and my dad worked a what I consider kind of a normal working class job. He was in a union, and my mom was pregnant with her third baby, my youngest brother. So a couple little kids, husband working, and she was not feeling great, right? Very morning sick. I These are vivid memories in my mind, but we were at the same time, my folks were building a house a couple blocks up the street. And my dad was subcontracting, or he was contracting all of the work for that big task, but it was part of the things he loved to do. He loved to build. So he also was a talker, and he met the people pouring the basement cement, which normally you probably wouldn't run into because someone else would be arranging all of that. But
Right. Sure.
he got to know them, and he's chatty enough that because in my experience, two by twos aren't necessarily evangelists,
Yeah.
which
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
know differs, right?
We were
There's different ways
we
it's
were just
handled.
waiting. We were waiting for just the right moment to bring it up.
Created a moment, and
Yep.
they invited him to a meeting. And apparently, the story after that is that he had been having kind of a crisis of faith. I'm not sure if my mom was aware of the crisis or if she was busy, being pregnant. But he was having a crisis of faith. He went to a couple meetings. He asked my mom to go. She went to one or two and said, no, thank you. And he started attending. And for a while, and this is where, memory doesn't serve me well, and it's not been discussed a lot. So no one had, right? It didn't cement in anyone's minds how long he attended by himself, but eventually it was mandatory that he took us kids. And so I would have been 7 years old when he found the truth. And by the time I was, I'm guessing 8, 9, it was full in. It was all the meetings, all the time. You are now this, not that.
Interesting. And this whole time, your mom was not attending with him.
Oh, and that's a real sticking point. I mean, let me be clear. That was a sticking point for me
Hmm.
forever. Um, and for people to whom I've told this story or shared, right? What on earth? Why would your mom? What? How could she let this happen? So, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of, I hate the word unpack,
Oh,
but
please do.
kind
This
of.
I'd love to hear how this goes.
So, my understanding now, a lot of years later, is you don't know what something is until way later. So, her perception was, okay, he's changed religions. I don't love it, but he had been Catholic. And when I say Catholic, I mean the kind of Catholics, the kind I'd like to be, where they don't ever go to church unless there's a wedding or a funeral. And then there's all the fun. There's incense and, carvings on the wall and saints and statues. But he didn't attend church, but they were Catholic. So when he married my mother, she was very Lutheran. Her whole family is still very Lutheran. So he converted, but I don't think it was an issue, right? It wasn't probably even a thought. Okay. I mean,
Sure.
Lutherans basically are Catholics, but with what do I like to say? Lutherans are Catholics, but with none of the fun stuff and all of the guilt. So he kind of lost out there.
It paints a picture. Yep.
And so I think for her, she saw it as, right, because you're in it, you're not outside of it, you're living day to day, and all of a sudden it's Wednesday and oh, you're going to meeting now, oh, the children are going, and then it's Sunday, oh, okay, right, and this, it just happens.
Yeah.
And when you're thinking of it as just another variation of what you're doing, but one that you would prefer, right, it wasn't, she didn't sense it as being terrible, she thought they were weird
Right.
fundamentally.
It's like going just to another church down the road, essentially, at least
Like
initially.
a weird, like a little bit, a little
Yeah.
bit much, a little much. Gradually over the years, of course, that shifted because it changed him. It changed who he was. And, it changed her children. And when you've had enough workers over for the odd supper around special meeting time and you're graced with their presence on a scheduled calendar visit, and you spend enough time being, every once in a while he was able to coerce her into attending some sort of function, and she's very intelligent and easily sort of picked out the hypocrisies or rules that weren't rules, but that comes cumulatively over
Right.
time.
Yep.
So I don't even remember what the question was. This is a
Oh,
problem with me, Mike.
I don't know either. I'm. We were just talking about how your mom was not attending, and so yeah. So that you said at 10 years old is when it really kind of solidified for you. Was that when you professed?
Interesting because, okay, so we were going, but not, I went because I had to, and eventually I wrapped my brain around to, well, this must be right. You listen to that long enough if you're vulnerable, and this seemed like it must be correct, even though I didn't want it to be, which then also just reinforces the fact that it's correct, because if you don't believe it, there's something wrong with you. So, right? It's a never ending circle.
Right.
And I need to go back, and I don't like looking at my journals. So sometimes I just refuse for a while. But I need to go back and ascertain when exactly I did profess the first time, because I don't remember this all that well. And I'll have to do
Hmm.
some work to think about it. But I listened to an old podcast that I was on, not talking about this exactly, but I did read some items from my journal, and I realized that at 14 I professed again.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like, what? What was wrong with you, girl? Um, yeah, so I must have professed, I don't know, 10, 11, 12.
Okay.
And the
In
professing was a while in coming, right? Like I knew I had to do this. Like
right.
it was
Yeah, we all knew that like it was coming. You just yeah, the feeling leading up to that is just one of impending doom, at least for me anyway, kind of. It, you know, it, yeah,
I didn't want to play in that sandbox at all.
right.
At all. And then my legs just did it for me once. Like they just were like, yeah, no, that's enough. Get up, right? Um, yeah. So there are times, and were you born into?
Yes, I was born
Okay.
into it.
Okay. So for me, it might be different, but there were times where I realized that I, the first moment I realized that this wasn't a choice anymore. Going to meetings was now what I did, not if I wanted. I'm
Mm,
not sure that it was ever a choice, but maybe I realized that I didn't want to do that, and then
right,
subsequently realized that I had no say. Um, but little things, because I had grown up wearing pants and shorts, and dresses were for occasions.
right,
And I loved that, right? I loved the occasions, but not when I'm playing on the monkey bars or playing volleyball. And when my dad walked me to school, and that was when I was about 10, and that was a very pivotal moment because that was where he said, this is the line and you can't cross it anymore. And I thought I'd
wow.
been doing a really good job. I'd negotiated a little side deal with God, and I thought we'd agreed on it, that
Mm,
I wore pants, 3 times. No, I took the what is it called? I took the hard way. I wore pants Tuesdays and Thursdays only, and dresses Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and thought that that was
oh wow,
sufficient for God, because clearly God understood that certain things are not, you can't do them as well in a dress.
yeah,
So, and I had taken on more of wearing the dresses that I didn't want to wear. So for me, those are the things that mark it. It was when I had to set myself apart as different, which you did, and people who are born into the truth did on a whole different level. It was just how you move
yeah.
through the world, I guess. Hey,
I mean, you, in a way, I would say that you had it a little bit harder because you saw the other side, a little bit before you had to conform. Whereas, and again, I'm speaking from a male perspective, which is far different than the female perspective in growing up. Um, but either way, when you grow up in it, you don't even know that you have a choice, and it just is what it is.
really nuances of difficulty and hurt, right? Because the moment you realized that there was a choice, or that you wanted to make a different choice, I think that as someone being born into this, that would be incredibly challenging on a different level. For me, it was, I want to go back to something
Right.
that I had a had time with.
Mm-hmm.
And for a person born into this, it's, I want to go toward this, and I'm not even sure what that's going to look like. I don't know. I don't
Yeah, no, totally. It's a completely foreign concept to deviate from the normal that everybody else around you is doing. So, yeah,
think of something, because I made, kind of logic arguments at my father about the wearing of dresses or the hair, and often was met with this. He said, it depends on kind of the, the year and the fashion and the style. And I always wondered if this was a 2 by 2 thing, or something he'd had to kind of mentally, some mental gymnastics he had to do,
yeah,
which was that, in the 70s, all the guys had long hair. And so if you were a 2 by 2 in the 70s, you looked really different. You really stood out. And I always thought, yeah, not all the guys had long hippie hair, but okay, maybe. Is that like common kind of 2 by 2
yeah. I
ration?
think it's funny because the like I didn't experience that because I was raised in the '90s and the 2000s, and but we've certainly heard stories of that was definitely a time, the '70s and maybe even a little bit into the '80s when men did have longer hair. It was the cool thing. It was I don't know. I mean, again, I really hate to equate the male experience with anything close to the female experience because they just cannot be compared in the insidiousness of them. But yes, guys probably stood out back in the 70s a little bit more if they had just a crew cut or whatever. Um, yeah,
I think right, women, we had to kind of, mark ourselves.
exactly. Yeah,
I think there's something though, right? Because there are all the men who loved all those women, and to have to mold your own self into something that supports
yeah,
that does a number. And the thing is ours is visible, right? There's all the
right.
visible and invisible hurt
Hmm.
that people carry, and so mine is easy to see,
Right.
and yours might not. And I'm not trying to say you have all this invisible hurt.
No, I
I'm
get it.
saying for men though, I
Yeah,
think it's harder because there was no physical markers of it, and
right.
I I
You
just don't
talk,
want to feel like somehow I have more weight to carry.
no, I think it's just a different weight. That's what I think it is. It's interesting that you mentioned, the men who, loved their spouses or and whoever, their women in that difference of appearance. And I feel like the church almost brainwashed the men to find like the simple appearance sexy. Like, and I don't know how they did it. It's a really bizarre thing, but I remember my friends being like, "Oh, that girl who literally just got like a jean skirt and straight pulled back hair, she's attractive." And I feel like we were all trying to convince ourselves that that was the case because that's what we had available to us in the dating pool. And yeah.
Almost anything would be attractive at right. That sounds
Right.
but that is right. You become complicit in your own cage making,
Yes.
because otherwise, what are you going to do? You can't have that, and you have to make yourself believe that that is gross. And you know what,
Yeah.
Mike, you're onto something, because growing up, I right for a time, I loved beautiful things. Like I loved it. My on my dad's side, funny enough, is just they're artists and creative people. And so there was art and texture to life and fun and beautiful. And my mom's side of the family, they're Lutheran, right? So kind of shave out the beautiful. Prairie people, farms, intellectual was what was valued. And yes, my mom and my aunts, they clean up real lovely and they're beautiful, and they all have short hair and they all wear lipstick. They all have earrings, right?
Right.
But as I was a child, and I remember this distinctly, I started to see when my mom put on lipstick. The feeling I had when I was small was, oh, she's going somewhere and look at her and she's beautiful. And I wasn't a teenager yet. I wasn't into the right that natural, I have to separate. So everything you do, I hate. I was
Right.
still little. And when she did that, I was bothered because I had started to internalize
Hmm.
that was basically devil worship. And so look at her, look at my harlot mother, my heathen mother with her short hair and her lipstick and her earrings. So, what young men, that contorting of,
Hmm.
and that is contortion, I did that
Yeah.
just in a different way. And it took me a long time to be able to get that part of myself back.
Yeah. Wow. It's 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 just also it's so heavy. I think thinking about the ways that we did it to ourselves unknowingly. It just happened. Yeah.
But that's the thing, because it can sound really benign, right?
Hmm.
If you spell it out on paper, you joined a really boring religious movement. it's it's just boring. Everything about it is boring. How can that be evil? It's
Yeah.
boring as fuck. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Language is welcome on here.
My apologies. It's boring, but it's
Yeah,
it's
totally.
it's not evil. It's just not for me. But the layers and layers and layers of mental kind of, you have to create a whole person and belief system and find supporting evidence, or you'll go crazy, which incidentally is a path an awful lot of people that I knew growing up in the two by twos took.
Yeah,
Right, there's an awful lot of resting. Is
for
that a
sure.
common word, or is that Canadian?
No, that's that we any worker that goes out of the work, they're always resting first. Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh boy. They
table
must
the
have been
language conversation
they
from
must have had so much energy after all that resting. You'd think.
you. One would imagine that you would come back with just a spring in your step.
Absolutely. Yeah. So moving toward your teenage years, was there anything of note that you experienced, in those? Were you rebelling much against, or were you conforming?
So I'm glad that I found that old podcast today and forced myself to listen to it, because I have had trouble in my life remembering huge chunks of time and space, because I just put it all away.
Yeah.
Because you can't here's the thing about memory is, if you put a memory away, you have to put everything adjacent to it. Does that make sense to you? You can't keep
Yeah,
just
it
part of it,
definitely
right?
does.
Because
Yeah.
they all touch somehow.
And it's a part of survival, I think, too. Our brain does that for a reason.
Oh, that, you know what? Thank you for saying that, because it's always bothered me. So I appreciate that take.
Yeah.
So it was a good thing I listened, because if you asked me that, I've just skimmed over those years for so long. I can tell you about the walk when my dad told me I had to wear pants or a dress. Pardon me. I can tell you every moment of that, every how the air smelled, how the my feet felt, everything. And then there's just kind of gaping wounds. But luckily, I was a prolific journaler, so I have access to a lot of it. I did try very hard um, to believe. I wanted to believe because I fundamentally believed that this was true. And then the summer between, at that time, we went to high school in grade 8, far too young, terrible. So I was a December baby, so I was already a little bit younger than everyone else.
Hmm.
And the summer between grade 8 and grade 9, I absolutely did not want to go to high school without having kissed a boy. Huge priority, Mike, along with, not eternal damnation. I also
Yeah.
really,
No.
really wanted to kiss someone. And this is interesting to admit, but the first person I kissed was actually a two by two. And I'm quite certain he was born and raised. And I met him at a convention, of course. And we made out for like 30 seconds on a walk. Huge coup d'etat for me, and never saw him again.
It's the two by two version of a one night stand.
Furtively kissing around the
I
corner of
love
the
it.
bend. But that, I think that kiss kind of lit a bit of a, oh, there's, some big feelings here. And then just circumstance had it that I kissed a boy that I was going to be going to high school with. And I dated someone from the world secretly, clearly. And I need to go back and read those journals more closely. But the lines that I pulled out that I listened to today, I was quite repentant. Probably I had been dumped or something. Things didn't work out for me, I'm guessing. Um, but I was very, very repentant. And knew that I had to get myself back on track with God. And so I professed again. And I don't believe that that lasted too long, because promptly after that, my mother calls them my glomming around in all black years, because I literally wore all black all of the time, just as a show of my internal feelings about the world.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a black vase and put dyed black flowers in it and hung up black Venetian blinds in my room, just to make it very, very clear. Um, I still went to meetings, I still gave testimony, and I'm sure you can just imagine how much thought, pre work I put into those testimonies. But think of the Psalms and Peter.
Yes, there was definitely some go-tos in there that many of us teenagers were very thankful for.
Yes. Yeah. So I was still going, but I was phoning it in by that time. And I was lying my ass off. And here's the thing, the lies started small. They started with my mom gave me $40 to buy a pair of jeans. And I would pack them in my backpack and change. I took the early bus to go to school so that I could change before anyone would see me. I put on pounds of makeup in the bathroom, bought a butane curling iron so I could, jazz up my hair. It was the 80s, okay? It's a great
Mm-hmm.
decade for fashion. But doing that meant then that I was more accepted by my peers
Yep.
at school, which then meant that I became more aware of the things that I was not allowed to do and wanted to do, which then entailed more lying. Sometimes I could convince my dad that perhaps I had homework that could only be done with this person, and right assurances of what a respectable family they were, when in reality it was a family with no rules and do whatever you want, and we will
Mm-hmm.
actually facilitate it for you. So I the people at school that I wanted to be friends with, they couldn't be friends with me, even though they'd known me since I was 4 years old, because I was not a fully fledged person. I was half of one thing and half of another, and desperate. And you know how people feel about desperate people, right? I was not the
Yeah.
best. I was not even like a decent version of myself. I was the absolute worst possible version. So, and then of course, right, you find the people who are also very, very unhappy. So I found them and trolled around in, you know, behaviors that today I think, oh my goodness, I can see where I would be living, and it would not be in a house, and I would be one of those kids, because I did run away when I was 15. I just decided, and I don't know what your experience was like, Mike, but I decided that this was probably right. The truth was probably true. It was probably correct, but I couldn't do it. And that decision point was a final acceptance of a terrible thing.
Yeah.
This is right, but I'm too weak, and I would rather go to hell than try anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
ran away to go live with a drug dealer that I hadn't asked. And luckily, he wasn't home when we knocked on his door. And so then one of my, other misfit friends took me to his house, and his mom agreed that I could spend the night on the couch. My plan was to get a job at McDonald's. I did not have a job, but I planned that I would just tell McDonald's that I needed this job, and that I would work at lunch hours for 1 hour and then after school for two more. And that this would give me all of the money I needed to pay the drug dealer for the use of his floor to sleep on and any other necessities.
Sure.
Well planned, clearly. So my mom promptly figured out where I was and came and got me. And I do remember these things very clearly. I said I would not go home, and she was very clear that I would. And I said, okay, I will go home, but I will never go to another meeting, and you have to support me. And she said, okay. So I spent one night at a grandparent's house. It was just blissful. And then the next day went home, and no one said anything until one of my brothers told me that the workers had been called when I ran away, and they had gone through my room and found my journals, brought them upstairs to the kitchen table, spread them out, and went through them and read them out loud.
Oh my goodness. What a violation. I'm so sorry to hear that happened to you.
It's just variation on a theme,
Yeah.
don't you think? I need to correlate the year to who was in our field because I'd like to know who did that. There's all these people who've done this amazing work of correlating all this information, and sometimes I have capacity and sometimes I don't, but I would like to know who that was.
Yeah, I'm sure we could figure it out.
Fascinating. I never even thought of that. He better. Oh, yes. Okay. I have, can I like segue for 1 second here?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I grew up and grew out, and we can go back and I'll finish off that thread. But there were couple moments where I would realize that I had to just move forward, and I just put it all away. And I had very brief kind of Cole's Notes versions of explaining, why I am the way I am. What you were in a what you had to wear dresses, all those pithy answers that I developed. I'm married. I've been married for ever, like 22-ish, 23 years. My husband is an amazing man, and he's a good listener. And I recall once he said, I don't really know much about you, like from before. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm an open book. I tell you every thought that passes through my mind, and then I expand on it. And he's like, yeah, but you don't talk about that. Yes, I do. You know where right? You know the data. But that was all I was capable of sharing. And every once in a while, I would troll the internet when you were still not even born. Maybe there were message boards,
Mm.
and I would read every single word, everything, like for hours. I would just dig in, read everything, and then not for a while. I missed everything, like the whole shakedown. I missed the shakeup. I found you guys, you'd already been around for like over a year. This is the first time that I have experienced people who just understand. We did not have the
Mm.
same experience, but I don't have to explain anything to you.
Yep.
It's changed my life in like a hugely powerful, incredible way to have community. So there's been such meaning for me there has been such meaning for me that all of the work that you've put into doing this, right? I can't even imagine your phone pings. I can't, and I don't want to. But the amount of difference that has made just for me makes all of that worth it. And I'm not okay. So now extrapolate that outward.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate those kind words. It's not something that I can fathom, and so I try not to spend too much time trying to fathom it. You know, and there's so many people in our community that have done so much in the last couple of years that yeah, I'm just so happy to be a part of it. And the ones before, I yeah, we're standing on the shoulders of giants right now.
Nice. yeah, so I went home and no one said anything, and then it must have been during the week. Sunday rolled around and I was just gloriously sleeping. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to put on a dress. I don't have to give testimony. Like that weight off of me was pretty awesome. And then my mom came down to my room and said, "Okay, we're leaving for church in an hour." And I was like, "What? Ooh, And she said, "Well, if you're not going to meeting, you're going to church." So that was non negotiable. So Mike, I went to church and smoked in the bathroom and bought cigarettes from the corner store for 25 cents each. And I wore my black trench coat and I refused to sing or speak any of the call and response. I don't want to try and parse out what made me angrier, but that made me very, very angry.
Yeah.
Actually, that might have lit a bit of a, there might have been a small fire kind of, smoldering, but being able to not go to meetings, that tamped it down a little bit. But then being forced to go back to the place that I had never wanted to leave, I know that her intentions were only good, but it
Right.
felt like it had been a betrayal. And now it felt like now you want me to come participate. I still cannot sit in church, like real church, not pretend church. I still cannot get through a hymn without, like, I choke up and I'm in silent tears and I chew on my tongue and I want to be able to sing some of them and I still have not been able to make it through
Yeah.
because it was such an incredible loss. So yeah, after that, you'd have thought that I just sort of clear sailing, right? Um, but I was pretty fucking mad. And,
Yeah. You saw freedom just within grasp, and then it was taken back.
well, and there was no processing back
Hmm.
then, right? We did. I'm not sure how it came about, but we did have to go. I don't think it was a have to go, but somehow my mom must have figured out a way we were going to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm not sure. And I believe I went first and probably explained some things, and then my parents went in, and then that was the end of that because that's the devil's right. That was Satan clearly trying to disrupt all that's light and good in the world. And I'm not sure. You have to have people who are willing to believe in the
Yep.
premise. Yeah. So I it's it's pretty apparent to me now that I had to go through that rage. I just feel badly about it. Just seems like such wasted time,
Mm.
you know, because I sat there for a while and then there were two moments in my life, and one was I was maybe about 19, and I remember realizing you can change. You don't have to be like this. You don't have to be angry. And worked at that for a little bit, but it was really when I was about 25. And they do say now that, the teenage brain doesn't truly mature. It's not really done fully and completely until I think 24, 25. And that really resonates with me. Or maybe I'm just clinging. I'm looking, right? For supporting evidence that I want. But that was when I realized no one was coming to save me. I'd been hoping my whole life for someone to come save me, and it was up to me. So that was a good moment. And that's when I started working to be just a better person and into the person that I wanted to be
Out of curiosity, this time after you set that line that you were no longer going to go to meeting, and then you were made to attend your mom's church for a while. Um, where were your beliefs during that time? Like, were you did you feel like you were a Christian in
Oh
that
God,
in that
no.
moment?
Oh
No.
no, no.
Okay.
If I'm quite certain that, yeah, yeah, no, I'm positive that I did not consider myself a Christian. I I would have tried any belief on for size if it was kind of dark.
Hmm.
I thought about becoming Wiccan, but it just annoyed me. Um, Seemed performative. I
Yeah.
don't mean disrespect to Wiccans, but yeah, I was definitely not a Christian. I probably said that I was an atheist.
Okay.
In my heart, I was probably agnostic, which is where I land today. Yeah, I lucked out when I went to university a little bit because I wanted to be a journalist, but I had no self confidence. And so then I just sort of meandered around back when it was cheap. You could do that. And our university had started women's studies. It was brand new at the school, and it was kind of 90s feminism, and I loved it. And we didn't have full on women's studies classes. So you could just cobble together this degree from classes that, if you could say that they related, it was perfect. So I kind of have a liberal arts degree,
Hmm.
but I took an awful lot of religion classes, religious studies. I took women in Christianity, um, all sorts of Christianity classes, cults and new world religions. And oh man, the professor could not get me to shut up because I had an opinion on everything. That was back before I was an early adopter of calling the 2x2s a cult, and
Okay.
my mom refused. She mostly called it that group. Um, but as official title, she thought of them more as a sect. That was as far as she was going to go. And I would make my case and argue, and I said they're a cult. And cults used to be, and some people maybe still only define them as, well, you need one leader. And I think that kind of semantic definition is silly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But I thoroughly enjoyed that class, and I kept all of my textbooks. I took women and mystic women, and yeah, it was just fascinating. And there, I'm glad that I was able to do that because it gave me some space to look at this from with some intellectual rigor and no feelings, right? Just see how these debates and discussions and naming and theologies developed and over time. And I was able to kind of cobble together a belief system that suits me, which that is probably that's my biggest sadness that I don't think will ever resolve. And I think one nice thing about getting older is understanding that some things are not going to resolve neatly or ever. And it's okay. I'll just be sad about that. But I don't have the capacity to belong to something anymore because I'm not able to trust it. I only look for the flaws. I feel very uncomfortable, and I've tried, and I feel quite sad that I didn't give this to my daughters. It's my biggest, I have a million, but my biggest parent regret is that I didn't raise them with that community, like the way it can be good.
Yeah.
And I figure I've done what I could do, right? Like healed as much damage as I can. I can't
Yeah.
fix everything. It's just like a limp.
Yeah. And but you've also broken, you know, uh, you've broken it for the next generation. So it's only I mean, who knows? Maybe our kids end up joining some other crazy thing down the road, but you've at least made sure that they're not going to be a part of this one.
They won't. They will not. Can you even imagine? Oh my God, that would be the absolute worst teenage rebellion. Oh,
your, your kid comes home with a bun. They got her.
I didn't even know I had to worry about that, Mike, but thank you.
I really don't think you have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, they saw enough. Heard enough of me
Yeah.
complaining. I had this, I don't know if you're like me, probably not, but I have little sort of like fantasies about, when you're really angry with someone and you want to just say all the right, and it just in your mind it's perfect. The lighting is right and the words are crisp and they're forced to listen, and then they actually hear you. I imagined that because I knew that, technically one day my dad would die and then there would be some sort of service. And I imagined, I sort of pictured it the way I'd been to other 2x2 funerals, right? In some hall, of course. Um, but I pictured myself being able to speak and lulling everyone into just a sense that this would be normal. And then just, I had, like, I've written this speech, over the last 30 years. It is solid in my mind. And then he did die. And we had something, and my mom must have got wind of my internal workings, and she's like, "You're not talking." And there were so many of them there. They came, and some of them, there was two parents of children who I'd been friends with. They'd been 2x2 peers, probably as much as you can be friends with some of them. And their parents were there, and I could be wrong. And I wasn't looking for a resolution in the sense that I did not ever expect to get it. So I wasn't searching for it, and I was not expecting it. And nothing really happened other than the mom, something she said. It was something, this is, I'm not quoting because I can't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of, we're so sorry for everything, right? And what I heard in that was a little bit of like, it wasn't just we're so sorry about your dad. It was everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Interesting.
had discouraged their daughter from spending time with me because I was from a divided home, and that had hurt so much as a child because she told me the way the kids will. My parents said I'm not supposed to hang out with you,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew that. So that was one thing, being from a late joiner. So you kind of got to figure out things that are just intuitive to everyone else. But you're not up there on your cred it must be earned. And that takes a long time. And I had none. And I had a heathen mother, right, with very short hair and earrings, who did
Right.
not come to meeting. So I didn't fit with 2x2s. And I sure didn't fit at school. So it was a long road.
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear that. Do you have anything else that you'd want to talk about in that period of time up into your 20s?
So I'm from a city, and for a while around this time, they arranged Friday night, and I'm not sure, would it have been Friday night youth Bible studies, youth sing along, youth something.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a few of those. Young people get-togethers is what they.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it was. Boom. Yes, okay. And they were out of town, and we would go to these, and well, I would. My dad would take me, and I just remember there was it was all about the cute boys. Okay, so there was like literally one attractive 2x2 in the 1,000 miles around me, and he would be at these. But he was also 4 years older, and he was attractive, and I was not, and I was divided. Like I had no chance. He would even his eyes would just they would naturally pass through me because divided home, not born and raised. I was not I hadn't figured out the cute girl thing that you were talking about. I was not a cute 2x2 girl because I did not grow up knowing how to do my hair. My clothes were always just a little bit off. Solid colors instead of, the pattern skirts, the small pattern. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, so we were going to these, and so that's okay, part A. Part B is you're going to just tuck that little anecdote away for a second. Part B is I'm in my glomming around black trench coat. I've run away. I'm miserable shit. And everyone at school, teachers, school guidance counselors have taken note that I seem to be going off the rails. So I'm getting kind of, there's eyes and concern and care that just infuriated me. But they also, they called me down to the office one day just before lunch because my minister had come to take me for lunch. My minister. Mm-hmm. So my minister.
I'm. This is fascinating.
And I would be very angry because I smoked cigarettes at lunch. So this, first of all, I did not want to be going for lunch with my minister. I couldn't smoke with my minister. And it just felt really wrong. I didn't realize until probably this minute, I probably could have just told the school. that serious. This, Mike, it takes me I need to live to be 150 because then I'll figure everything out. Then I can go back to church and sing a hymn.
There you go.
So ministers take me out for lunch on a
And
regular.
is this your Lutheran minister or 2x2, a worker? Okay.
The young one.
Female or male?
Male, clearly.
I
And
mean, honestly, I don't know. This is a little bit weird. I mean, pe- people people are. Well, I mean, it's weird, but I'm just saying, a male minister coming to a teenager's school to take them for lunch.
mm,
Yeah, I don't know.
he looked like a button-up Mormon,
Yeah,
right?
I want to know what was going through the mind of the people at the front office.
I'm wondering if my dad called the school. That seems beyond his capabilities, but he did work for the phone company. So,
Interesting.
right? I don't know. I should ask. My mom will say, I don't remember. Um, but she does remember this. He also came to our house, and my bedroom, it was like a raised bungalow. So the bedroom was in the basement, very distant from everywhere else in the house. And we spoke in my bedroom with the door closed for privacy more than once. And I remember sitting on my bed, and then he sat right next to me. And I was like, this is not right. This is not okay. But even though I didn't go to meetings anymore, I had zero idea what to do and how to handle this. I had no idea what to do. So I stood up and just leaned against the dresser. And he would come. And so that's part 3, right? So we've part 3, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 things that we're going to put together. So I find your Facebook group one night at about 11 p.m. And Mike, I'm not a sleeper. I have troubles. I either can't fall asleep or I wake up and can't go back to sleep. 11 p.m. is not when a person like me should go on Facebook. But I did. And I almost died. reading stories that some are so adjacent to mine, or the feelings, or people put into words things that I had felt but never realized or knew how to say. But 1 second before I found your group, the very first, because I'd seen someone say something about written a piece for Vox about the 2x2s, and they were a journalist and they were asking for recommendations. What other media outlets should I pitch this to? And I was like, the what? So I type into my friend Google 2x2 news, and the first thing that came up was a BBC article where they spoke to someone about I believe, convicted pedophile.
Well, maybe not convicted, but at least a pedophile. Is it Robert Corfield?
I thought he was
He's
convicted. Oh, he admitted.
he admitted it to BBC, but no, he's never been convicted and
That's who
probably never
picked
will
me
be.
up. That's who picked me up at
Wow.
school. So I saw that BBC article where someone acknowledged bad behavior to the BBC, which is bonkers. Like,
It
honest, like, you what?
it was really bizarre. I can't believe that they got that from him. But yeah,
Yeah. And I almost melted. Like, I almost melted because who is who led our youth group. That was the time frame that he referenced when I was in that youth group.
yeah.
So there's some memories of the person that he acknowledged,
Wow.
right? There's that.
I can't imagine finding that out of the blue, right? You
The
just
blue.
did a search.
I was just
Oh
trying
my
to do
gosh.
my fucking taxes.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Like, how do I claim GST? Yeah, so I saw that. And then, yeah, I didn't sleep for probably 3 days. And I will tell you that sad things have happened in my life, like tragedies. Not lots, right? But there have been things that have been hard and sad. And I have never, and I'm a crier. I will cry at a commercial, apparently during a hymn. My kids make me happy, I'll cry. They make me sad. If I'm angry, I cry. I don't. This has never happened before. I went to bed finally, and like the tears, they just poured out of my eyes. That has never happened to me, ever. So, I tunneled deep down, spread all around into remembering, and it was pretty intense. And then I crawled into my crawl space, aptly named because it's a literal crawl. I've dislocated my ribs crawling into it before. Not this time, though. And I found my bin of stuff that I've hauled around, and I'm so glad that I've hauled it around. But I had tied a box shut and tied it shut so that there was like a note. And to get in, you had to rip the paper. I have not opened it since I was probably 16, 17. And I had kept some of my notebooks, and there's page after page. Robert Corfield is coming back. Robert Corfield is going to be away, sad face. Stars Robert Corfield. Like over and over. The amount of, I took copious notes. I should have been a stenographer because I, word for word, verbatim, right? Dale Schultz, every single thing he said.
Wow.
And it's perfect. Robert Corfield got a lot of play. There's a lot.
Wow.
So
That's a lot.
I'm still working through some of that. I've written the now parts of it, but I have to go back again and think, because sometimes I have to, I don't know how you are with this, but I have to kind of just, I don't even have to think it through. I have to take a break from poking around. It's almost maybe like physio,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Yeah.
do enough, and then it's like, okay, now leave it alone for a little bit.
I'm not very good at doing it, but I
I
know
was
what you mean.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but how are you looking after yourself?
Um, Pretty well, I think. You know, I go to therapy on a regular basis, and um, I don't know. You know, I'm sure maybe there's something that I'm overlooking, but I feel like my psyche is one that was kind of built for this, and like, so there's a part of me that worries that there's something deep down that's gonna just break me at some point, but it hasn't happened yet, and I'm thankful for that. I know, and I've got Abby here to support me, and I support her, and yeah, I, I don't I don't know how I'm doing it. I just know that I'm doing okay.
So this might seem forward, and I could be wrong, right? But you get a sense of people, and I feel like there are some people who, they're good at getting a sense of people because it's just natural. Some, I don't know, DNA, genetics, conditioning. And some people from the two by twos have a good sense of people because you had to develop that and hone it. And I feel like that's one of my superpowers.
Hmm.
Superpower, that's too much. It's not a superpower. It's one of my strengths.
I think we can
And
consider it a superpower.
okay. But you strike me as someone who is very resilient. And it concerned me when you said, I worry that there's something I'm missing, right? Because
Hmm.
you should feel that you're plunged into the depths and you're reading and seeing and curating all of that all of the time.
Yeah,
So that's, I think that that makes sense that you are like, well, where's my black hole?
right.
How come I can sit on this screen with this woman and have a cheerful, authentic conversation and I'm not going to go out and slit my wrists after?
Yeah, like I said, I'm I think it's helpful that I am hyper aware of what can be, and therefore I'm hopeful that if I do start slipping toward that dark place, then I will be able to recognize it, and Abby will be able to recognize it, and we'd address it then. But so far, I don't know. I'm just happy to be here.
When I kind of scan, right, like there's a lot of people in that group and there's just such varying levels of working through. And some, it's so raw and so real. And sometimes that breaks my heart because it took me so long. And then it makes me really happy to see you, right? Because it took me so long and it was so hard, it does not mean that is the rule,
Right.
right? You're showing people that it doesn't have to look like that. And for it just has to be for some people what it is.
Hmm.
But you're a really good example and also of like proactive care, therapy
Yeah.
tools, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I was maybe even overly proactive about therapy. I went to therapy, and she was like, "Well, what's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just here just to make sure nothing goes wrong."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. That also made me, that's good. My entire life is built around trying to stitch myself into one being, right? Like a semblance of a human being, a reasonable approximation, because I split myself in half for a long time. And it was probably just really shitty timing in terms of development and split myself in half to find that, each of the places I was trying to participate didn't really want me. And so that has been a lifetime process. And that is another thing that I'm never, maybe, maybe it's a big word. Never is a big word. I am okay as me because I feel like I've done a lot of work. I continue to work on myself and be the person that I'm meant to be. And I don't need any more. what I wanted for so long and couldn't get, which was to feel at home in the world in the way that I didn't have to think about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm so much more at peace with that. I don't know, right? All of our experiences are so different, but I've stopped chasing that. And if it comes, well, wouldn't that be a treat? And if it doesn't come, that's okay too.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about what you've been working on recently. You have a website. Tell me about it.
Okay, so I have, I guess the main project that's relevant to this is Cultivated. It's a Substack. Blah, blah, blah. Can I do that again?
Yeah.
Substack is a terrible word. So stupid for branding. Um, it just sounds like you're like kicking something to the like on the ground. Substack. Um, so I have Cultivated by Kristen H. McLeod because someone has my name. So it's Kristen H. McLeod and it's Cultivated and it's a memoir. And it's funny because I've been writing this in a sense since I started my journals when I was 7. But I went back to school and did a very brave and fabulous thing at about 40. I did an MFA in creative nonfiction at King's University College in Halifax. It's very prestigious. And it was absolutely amazing. And this was my project. And I convocated from that program in March, May of 2020. So, as you can imagine, with 3 young kids at home who were refusing to do online school and various other terrible things, I kind of put my project to the side and just had to get through life. And I continued to write and I started teaching, and it was fabulous. And thought, I don't know, right? I pitched my project to editors and agents in New York and Toronto and had interest and inquiries. And what they wanted was a straight up cult memoir, like Educated, Tara Westover. And I've tried to do that, but I feel like I would have to make up so much of where there's big gaping wounds of memory that it didn't feel right. So I've written my story in essays and they're loosely linked but connected. And then when I found your beautiful work and saw what was happening, I thought, there's probably an excellent chance. And I spoke to an editor at a house. There's a really excellent chance that with everything going on, they would take this on. But if I signed a contract tomorrow, it would be 3 years before it saw the light of day. And I feel like yes, I want to publish like a real book. I want a book on my shelf. I don't even care if it's garbage. I want it there so I can be like, there, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I accomplished the thing. It's right.
Yeah.
Um, so that still matters to me. But what matters more is that if this story, honestly, if this story helped one person or if they ended up connecting with another person, it's worth it. It really is because I know what it felt like to be lonely in your struggle to figure this out. And if I can be part of this community of people, right? First as an X 2x2. And then as we all have different ways that we're gonna do things. And so there are the creative types, there's the podcast hosts and the connectors like you. And I'll do my part. And it's been incredible. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have cultivated. I send out. My goal is to send out newsletters. They're about twice a month. If I go on vacation or something, I happily go on vacation. But the generally it's been pretty consistent. And it's a small but growing and really engaged community of people. So that has been phenomenal. And then I have I don't like watching videos. It drives me crazy. Like my mom
Mm.
is always sending me, watch this. And I delete. I'm like, yeah, I didn't watch it and I will never. But people really like videos.
Yeah,
YouTube.
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, I'm first of all, thank you so much for putting yourself out there and building that work of art. It honestly is what I feel like it is, what you've created around Cultivated. And I feel like, I don't know, the videos that you make, or almost like it's like 2x2 ASMR or something. I know,
I love
I
that. Oh
know
my God.
you just speak so well, and the music and the colors, your backgrounds and your clothing, like, it's all just very vibrant and so rich, and I just love it. So thank you for adding it to the collection of 2x2, just the 2x2 zeitgeist, I guess.
My eyes are tearing up. That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. And I like that is people say nice things, right? And sometimes my writing or my words will land with someone and they send heartfelt notes and comments. And yours is right up there with those. The idea that I could be 2x2 ASMR, that I didn't even know I wanted to do that.
I'm just telling you, put on some noise canceling headphones and put on a Kristen McLeod video or audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing, Mike. I spent my whole life waiting, right? Playing in the shadows because I couldn't do things, then wanting to do them and failing. And often I kneecapped myself because I didn't have the confidence and I set myself up to fail or I didn't try. And I realized again, in the same way that I realized when I was 25, no one is coming to save you. No one. And now it is, if you are going to do this, you have to do it now.
That's why we're sitting here right now. I had this idea literally 6 days ago, and I was like, I just need to do it.
Yeah, you are just one of those. You know how people are like genetically gifted and they turn into athletes and they're in the Olympics or right, signing
Yeah,
billion-dollar contracts. You won the genetic lottery of resilience and cheer. And I'm not saying that you don't work at that, but I don't think that you have this heavy lifting that some of us have to do.
that may be true. That's true in to some degree. I don't know that I would say I'm cheerful all the time. My kids would definitely disagree with that.
Oh, well, our
But
kids have to know our angriest selves. That's the
yes,
point of children.
yep. Well,
I
thank
don't
you.
mean that to sound trite though, Mike. I need to be clear. I don't mean that
Yeah,
you just wake up and you're like, la, 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 and life is so easy. I don't mean that at all. Okay.
sure. I didn't take it as that.
Okay. Good. Oh, I love that. I love that. 2x2 ASMR. Oh my goodness. I love also that I know what you mean when you say that. And I only know because I have three teenagers.
Right, I know. 10 years ago, ASMR. I don't even know if that was a term. Who knows? I don't.
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to be connected to you and to Abby and to everyone. And I appreciate just the vitality and the force of kind of saying it like it is, but building a respectful, honest community. You keep it in line, and that might be a bigger job than some people might imagine, but you do it gracefully, all of you, and beautifully, and it's appreciated. And I appreciate the support that you've given to me, right? I'm just like, ah! I remember I'd be like, this feels like the right place to share it, but I don't want to. That's always held me back is I don't want to sound like I'm selling something or I'm participating in something to sell something, or I hate doing that. And so putting myself out like there like this is kind of like a dream. I wanted to be on a stage. Do you know David? You're too young. Do you know who David Sedaris is?
Absolutely. I'm an NPR. I'm an NPR fan. So
Okay, I
yes,
want to be David Sedaris, but me. I'm
yeah,
also short. I love fashion. I want to that was my dream, right? Like, when you build the pretend dream in your head, well, it's not pretend, but it's the dream. My dream was like, I would publish this book. Um, and so then I was like, what the fuck? I'm just going to do it from my living room or my
yeah,
hall. Actually, it's not my living room. So I'm having a blast and I'm trying to make, something beautiful out of something hard.
yeah.
And then I get to wear all the clothes that literally some of them still have tags because people buy art. I buy clothes. I live in a very small city in the middle of nowhere. in the middle of vast prairies in Canada. There's nowhere to wear fancy clothes, but I buy them, and now I have a
Mm,
place to wear. And
that's
it's fun.
perfect. I love it. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on, telling us so much of your story. I hope to see more from Cultivated, and I'll be putting on my noise canceling headphones in a quiet room and and enjoying everything that you have to share with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.